Welcome back to pregame.tv, the Tuesday B team. Bryan Leonard and Brady Kannon with you. Week 4 of the college football season, week 3 of the NFL season, really getting down and dirty into football here. Full-fledged effort, and Bryan Leonard's going to take a look at a college game. We're going to start off in chronological order. Of course, a Saturday college game with the Virginia Tech Hokies hosting the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Point spread of 8 at this time. And Bryan, what do you think about this one? Been a kind of a topsy-turvy season for the Hokies, certainly.
Yeah, there definitely was, and they get that big upset of Ohio State. Last week they played East Carolina, a team that's been very impressive thus far.
Absolutely.
And East Carolina wins that game. I think it was a little bit of a shocker to Virginia Tech. Now they get a little bit of time to relax, get back to work, and they are playing in a conference game here against a Georgia Tech team who's been a little bit up and down, I'd say. Even though they're winning these games, they have not been impressive.
Right, exactly. And you can kind of picture what happened to Virginia Tech last week coming off of the victory over Ohio State. A real easy spot to say let down here, after that huge emotional win against East Carolina. But at the same time, the Pirates have been very impressive. I believe they're 3-0 against the spread.
Yeah, they're a team just a couple of weeks ago. I had South Carolina against them.
Right.
And they were very impressive in a spot where South Carolina should have been ready for that game.
Yes.
I mean, after the embarrassing performance against Texas A&M, for East Carolina to go in there and give them everything they could like that and cover the spread, that was a buy sign to me on East Carolina.
Well, and it took South Carolina one more week, where last week they did show up and got the victory over Georgia in what was a great game.
And it tells you how quick a season could turn around, because now I believe they're 15th ranked after that win, after as bad as they looked in the opener. You know,
and people are talking about the playoffs and whatnot. Well, now South Carolina has a pretty impressive win over a team that people are, have a lot of stock in Georgia. So, I mean, maybe, as shocking as their loss was in the opening game to Texas A&M, maybe it's more impressive that they've now got a win over Georgia.
Yeah, they're not out of it now. I mean, this is a team, they always say if you're going to lose, you lose early.
Right.
Unfortunately, it was on national TV in the first game of the season. But as a team gets better, the guys that judge it take into more account what is happening at the end of the year than they do what's happening at the beginning.
Which I think is the right way to do it. But let's talk about this one we have here. Georgia Tech, the Yellow Jackets, visiting Virginia Tech, and we have the point spread at -8. Virginia Tech, always known for their defense and special teams. Georgia Tech, always known for their offense, the option that they run. If there's any team that I think would be able to prepare for that, it would be Virginia Tech, a conference foe, and, again, a defensive stalwart traditionally. They may be the team that can slow Georgia Tech down a little bit.
They definitely do. In fact, if you go back covering the last 5 years, they played them each of the last 5 years. Basically, Georgia Tech averages on the season about 35 points a game.
Right.
Virginia Tech holds them 12 points a game below their season average. So they perform very well against them. Now, I didn't back out those Virginia Tech games, so it's actually a little bit more than the 12 when you back out the games against the Virginia Tech against Georgia Tech. But that just tells you how well they prepare for this team and how quick they are defensively to be able to cover them. And what's really interesting here, if you take a look at Georgia Tech's schedule so far, first game they played a Division II FCS school at Wofford. Wofford plays basically the same offense Georgia Tech does. Second game, they played Tulane. Tulane, a team that I thought coming into the season was a little bit overrated. Tulane was right in that game coming into halftime. In fact, they had a 7-point lead with about 5 minutes to go at the half. Second half, Georgia Tech actually overran them a little bit, wore them out. Third game, last week, they played Georgia Southern, which was a big play for me. Line on that game started off at about 24, went all the way down to 17. Georgia Southern's another team that plays the same offense basically as Georgia Tech does. What you take out of those games is those teams they played, Wofford, a Division II team, Georgia Southern, a team that's new to Division I for the last couple of years, those teams actually outran Georgia Tech. So this is
saying a lot.
Yeah. So you're facing, in practice, you're basically facing these guys every week in practice. And so you knew what they were going to run, and they still did it better than you did. Now, Georgia Tech, the problem you run in with Georgia Tech is you run into Stanford, Northwestern, a lot of these schools, Duke, the academics to get into those schools is much tougher. So the guys who are physically gifted that want to play that offense, they're going to go to a Georgia Southern. They're going to go to a military school of some sort if they're going to go into the service. So Georgia Tech is the originator of it. In fact, the head coach, used to coach at Georgia Southern. He's the one that implemented that back then before he went to Georgia Tech. So they're at actually a disadvantage when they're playing a team like that. And so now these players have seen these teams, they know what they're going to run, and they still had a hard time stopping. I believe 7.4 yards a carry last week for Georgia Southern. Now you're having a Virginia Tech team who is very familiar with, it's a conference foe, and they didn't have any success running the football on these other teams. I think it's right now, Georgia Tech, even though they're 3-0, I think this is a team right now that's a little bit overrated. And I played it at -7 at Treasure Island. It's now 8. 8's fine. Don't worry about that. As long as you're not laying over 10, I think this is a nice play here on Virginia Tech.
You ready to make it official?
Let's do it. You could tell a lot about these teams based on the style of play that they've played before. I talked about the Wolford. I talked about the Georgia Southern. If your defensive players know what the opposition is going to run and they still can't stop it, that tells you there's huge problems on that defense for Georgia Tech. Now they're playing against a Virginia Tech team who actually has a quarterback that they haven't had in the last few years. Yeah, obviously when Michael Vick was there, they were very good. But this is a team now that has a better quarterback than they've had the last 3 or 4 years. They can move the football. I think Virginia Tech is going to have an easy time moving the football on Georgia Tech. And Virginia Tech has been able to stop this option. I think they do it again. This is a cheap number. I was really surprised it came out this low. I was glad to take the -7. I'll be happy to lay the -8. We're going to lay it here with Virginia Tech coming off of a bad performance last week. It's a pretty good Hokies team. We're going to take them and lay the points here. We're going to eat some chalk.
Well, I think that works out well for you with Virginia Tech coming off of that loss last week.
You know they're going to be focused.
And again, we talked about the natural letdown spot. You know, that was fairly predictable that was bound to happen. But I agree with you that this Virginia Tech team is a good team. Obviously, they beat Ohio State. Right. So I think Georgia Tech this week is stepping up in class, and you're getting a pretty short number.
Yeah, when you played 3 teams or lower end teams, even though Georgia Southern's a team that's on the rise. I mean, that's a money maker team right now.
And we talked about East Carolina. I mean, those are 2 bye teams right now.
Yeah. So Virginia Tech's gone up against some tougher competition. As you said, Ohio State, East Carolina is a very good team. They're more tested here than Georgia Tech, which is another point to take the favorite.
Absolutely. Well, that'll do it for our college segment. Stay with us. We're going to talk some NFL. It is the B team, Bryan Leonard and Brady Kannon. It's pregame.tv.